Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today we're doing a Master Duel Infernoid Snake Eye deck profile. So I'm really excited to do some for you guys because this deck was actually suggested to me by one of my patrons, JoyBoy. And this deck is an extremely powerful deck to play in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel because you can actually skip your opponent's turn with this deck by using King Calamity. And with Decatron, it's very easy to get the exact level that you need to synchro summon into the Crimson Dragon. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like in your name description in a single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. And definitely give JoyBoy some love down in the comments down below for suggesting such an awesome deck. So let's get straight on into this one, guys. So first off, we're playing 2 copies of a Nunku. A Nunku is definitely a 2-of in the build, and it's just an awesome boss monster to be able to summon. And as the ability cannot be normal summoner set, it must be special summoned from your hand or your graveyard by banishing 3 Infernoid monsters from your hand or grave, while the levels and ranks of all effect monsters that you currently control are 8 or lower, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. All of your Infernoid monsters actually share that common effect, that if you control monsters that are 8 or higher with their level or rank, you actually cannot summon any Infernoid monsters to your side of the field, which is a little bit of a downside, but it's how they balance these cards. This card also has the ability, when this card is special summoned, you can destroy all other monsters on the field, and once per turn, during either player's turn, when a spell or trap card or effect is activated, you can tribute a monster to negate the activation, and if you do, banish that card. We then play 2 copies of Deviati. Deviati is an amazing 2-of in the build, and this card has a similar effect to your copy of a Nunku, but this card actually destroys all spells and traps on the field except void cards, and once per turn, during either player's turn, when another monster effect is activated, you can actually tribute a monster and then negate the activation if you destroy, which is a really cool ability. I love that about these 2 boss monsters, that a Nunku destroys monsters and Deviati destroys spells and traps, but Deviati negates monsters and your copy of a Nunku negates spells and traps. We then play a single copy of Ontadel. Ontadel is just a really big boss monster that can summon out to your side of the field extremely easily, and when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can actually activate this effect, that this card can make a second attack in a row, which is a crazy powerful effect. We then play a single copy of Semestus. Semestus is really good as a 1-of in the build as well, because this card has a really cool ability that when this card is on your side of the field, if it attacks an opponent's monster, the effects activate it at the end of the battle phase, that you can banish 1 card on the field, which is a crazy powerful effect. We then play 2 copies of Sajet. Sajet is just really good as a 2-of, especially to work with our copy of Void Feast. This card is a really cool ability that deals with your opponent's extract, that when this card declares an attack, you can banish 1 monster from your opponent's extract, their choice, which is a really cool ability just to deal with your opponent's cards out of their extract. We then play a single copy of Petrula. Petrula is just a really cool card in the deck as well. And this card has the ability to let you target a spell or trap on the field and destroy it, which is a crazy powerful effect. We then play a single copy of Harmonic. Harmonic is also a really cool 1-of in the deck that actually destroys a monster on the field with its ability, but this card cannot attack the turn you activate its effect. We then play a single copy of Antra. Antra is amazing in the deck as a 1-of because this card lets you target 1 card that your opponent controls that's face up on the field and return it back to the hand to be able to just bounce a card off the field. We then play 3 copies of Decatron. Decatron is the most important Infernoid in the entire deck and why the deck works so well. This card is ability, if it's normal or special summon, you get to send an Infernoid monster from your deck to the graveyard except another copy of Decatron. And if you do, increase this card's level by the level of the sent monster. And if you do, this card's name becomes that monster's and replaces card's effect with that monster's effect, meaning this card's best targets to send to the graveyard is actually your copy of Deviati or an Nunku, so it can gain their negate abilities. But it's really cool to be able to send your copy of a Nunku to the graveyard because then this card will become a level 11, and then you can synchro summon with a level 1 Snake Eye monster into a copy of Crimson Dragon or Final Sigma, so you can go in for the King Calamity lock, which is so cool about this card. This card is an amazing 3 on the deck and probably the most important card in the entire build. We then play 3 copies of Dibelstar. Dibelstar is definitely definitely a 3-of in the build, and it's so important for this deck to be able to summon out to your side of the field because it has a really cool ability that basically you can special summon this card from your hand by sending one card from your hand or field to the graveyard, which is a really powerful ability. And if this card is normal or special summon, you can set a Sinful Spool Spell or Trap from your deck to your side of the field. And during your opponent's turn, if this card is sent from its owner's hand or field to the graveyard, you get to send a card from your hand or field to the grave, and if you do, special summon this card, which is an amazing effect for this card to have to instantly get it back on the field. But this card is amazing because it helps you get your Infernoid monsters into the graveyard because they can summon themselves from the grave, which is a really cool ability, with some of them being able to summon from the grave, like your copies of Anunku and Deviati. We then play 3 copies of Snake Eye Ash. Ash is definitely a 3-of in the build, and it's just an amazing normal summon in the deck, because if this card is normal or special summon, you get to add a level 1 fire monster from your deck to your hand, basically being the Stratos for the deck. You can also send 2 face-up cards you control to the graveyard, including this card, to special summon a Snake Eye monster from your hand or deck, except another copy of this card, which is an insane ability about this card to instantly get one of your Snake Eye monsters on the field. We then play just 2 copies of Popular. Popular is really good as a 2-of in the build, is if this card is added to your hand except by drawing it, then you can special summon this card, and if this card is normal or special summon, you get to add a Snake Eye Spell or Trap from your deck to your hand, and if this card is sent to the grave, you can target a fire monster in your graveyard and place it face up in its spell and trap card zone, which is a really awesome effect. We then play just a single copy of Oak. Oak is amazing in the deck as a 1-of, just as a combo piece, because if this card is normal or special summon, you get to target one of your level 1 fire monsters that's banished or in the graveyard, and either add it to your hand or special summon it to your side of the field, which is an insane ability to be able to use with all your level 1 fire monsters in the deck, and it shares the exact same effect as your copy of Ash, that you can send 2 face-up cards that you control to the graveyard, including this card, and then special summon a Snake Eye monster from your hand or deck, except another copy of this card, which is a really cool effect. We then play 2 copies of Snake Eyes Flameberg Dragon. Flameberg Dragon is definitely a 2-of in the build, and this card is basically Soul Charge because it's insane in the build, because if this card is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, you can special summon 2 level 1 fire monsters from your grave to your side of the field, which is an insane effect just to be able to summon monsters back to your side of the field, like your copy of your Decatron or any of your Snake Eye monsters that are level 1, which is so cool. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the hand traps. So for the hand trap monsters we're playing in this build, we're going to start with a single copy of Karakuri. Karakuri is really good as a 1-of in the build to be able to use in this deck because it is a level 1 fire monster, which is so cool about this card. This card is really good at board wiping your opponent, and it's just a fantastic hand trap. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is definitely a 3-of in the build just to stop your opponent from touching the deck. We also play 3 copies of Maxi. Since it is a Master Duel deck profile, you got to play 3 copies of Maxi, because basically with this card, every time your opponent special summons a monster, you're going to get to draw a card, which is so cool about this card. This card is absolutely broken. So that's it for the hand traps for the deck. Let's get in to the spells. So for the spells, we're going to start with a single copy of 1-for-1. 1-for-1 is definitely a 1-of in this build because this card helps us special summon level 1 monsters from our deck. We can play a single copy of Divine Temple of the Snake Eye. This card is a really good field spell in the deck, but you only need a single copy in the build. This card has the ability, when this card is activated, you get to place a Snake Eye monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard face up in its owner's spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell. And level 1 fire monsters you control gain 1100 attack points and once per turn. If your opponent normally special summons a monster, except during the damage step, you can target 1 monster on the field, treat it as a continuous spell, and special summon it to the field, which is a really cool ability. We then play 2 copies of the original Sinful Spools Snake Eye. This card is really good as a 2-of in this build. It lets you send 1 other face-up card you control to the graveyard to special summon a level 1 fire monster from your hand or deck, which is a really cool ability because we have a lot of targets in this build to be able to summon out to our side of the field, like our copy of Decatron. You can also banish this card from the graveyard and then target a Snake Eye or a Diabellstar monster in your graveyard and then add a level 1 fire monster from your deck to your hand, then place a targeted monster on the bottom of the deck, which is going to help you recycle your resources while also searching out the exact cards that you need. We then play 2 copies of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave is definitely a 2-of in the build just to make sure that your opponent's not going to hand trap you while you're going in for all of your plays. We then play 2 copies of Void Imagination. Void Imagination is really cool as a 2-of in the build to help us fusion summon into our Infernoid boss monster in the extract, and it also has a really cool ability to Infernoid monsters you control whose original level is 2 or higher become level 1, and all battle damage inflicted to your opponent is halved, but this card is really cool to help you fusion summon into one of your really cool boss monsters in the extra deck. We then play 3 copies of Void Vanishment. Void Vanishment is really awesome as a 3-of in the build because this card lets you discard a card to add a Void Spell Trap from your deck to your hand, which is a really awesome effect to be able to instantly get the exact card that you need. We then play 3 copies of Bonfire. Bonfire is a great rota for the deck, letting us search out the exact monster that we need, like a copy of Snake Eye Ash. We then play 3 copies of Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils. This card is amazing to help us search out our copy of Diabellstar directly from our deck to our hand, which is really cool to be able to do, and this card also lets us add it from graveyard to hand, which is just such a cool ability. And during your main phase, you can actually banish this card from the grave, and then target one of your Sinful Spoils spells or traps that's banished or in the graveyard, accept a copy of this card, and place it on the bottom of the deck, and then draw a card, which is a really cool ability. So, that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get in to the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing one, and that's going to be 1 copy of Void Feast. Void Feast is great as a 1-of in the build, and this card has the ability that you can send a Void Spell or Trap from your hand or face up from field to the graveyard to be able to special summon 3 Infernoid monsters from your deck whose total level equal 8, meaning you can summon out a copy of Sajet and 2 copies of Decatron off this card's ability to instantly get 3 monsters out on your side of the field, which is a really cool ability, and it also ignores their summoning conditions to help you go in for the exact plays that you need. This card is an amazing 1-of in the build, but it's super easy to get to, which is why we just play a single copy in the deck. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, guys, we're going to start with a single copy of the Crimson Dragon. The Crimson Dragon is definitely a 1-of in the build because this card helps us go in for a copy of King Calamity so easily in this deck. This card is amazing in the build because it has the ability, if this card is Synchro Summon, you can actually quick effect target a level 7 or higher Synchro monster on the field, except a copy of the Crimson Dragon. Return this card back to the extract. When you special summon a Dragon Synchro monster from your extract with the same level as the targeted monster, and it's treated as a Synchro Summon, meaning you can use this card with your copy of Geomathmech Final Sigma to be able to summon out King Calamity. Speaking of King Calamity, we also play a single copy of King Calamity in the deck, because this card basically skips your opponent's turn. We then play a single copy of Final Sigma. Final Sigma is the card you target with the Crimson Dragon to be able to summon out your copy of King Calamity during the opponent's turn, because it is a quick effect to be able to summon it out to your side of the field to skip your opponent's turn, and then on the follow-up, you just go in for game. We then play a single copy of Baron de Fleur, because this card is an amazing 1-of in the deck to be able to make in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, because it's a really good negate in the build, plus it can pop cards on the field. We then play a single copy of the Infernoid Fusion Monster, which is a really cool card to be able to make with Void Imagination, and this card is a really cool ability that when this card is Fusion Summoned, you can apply the following effect based on the number of monsters you used as fusion material to summon out this card. If you use 3 or more, each player sends 3 cards from their extract to the graveyard. If you use 5 or more, each player sends 3 cards from their deck to the graveyard, from the top of their deck to the graveyard. If you use 8 or more, each player returns 3 of their banished cards back to the graveyard. If you use 10 or more, each player sends their entire hand to the graveyard. We then play a single copy of Access Code just to be able to pop multiple cards on the field and help us go in for game. We then play a single copy of Appaloosa because this card is very easy to summon in this deck because this deck swarms like crazy, and plus it's really good to go in for link monsters because then with the Infernoid's abilities that actually lock you, if you have monsters or ranks on your side of the field that are level or ranks higher than 8, you actually can't summon your Infernoid monsters. You can link them away to be able to keep summoning out your Inferno monsters, which is why we play so many link link monsters in the deck, but Appaloosa is really good in the deck to be able to make a multiple negate monster. And then play a single copy of the Swamp Ship, because this card works really well with our copy of our Promethean Princess. Promethean Princess is amazing in the build because this card actually brings back monsters from your graveyard to your side of the field. We're pretty much only playing fire in the deck, and this card is insane because you can actually special summon a fire monster from the graveyard, and if a monster is special summoned to your opponent's side of the field while this card's in the graveyard, you can actually target a fire monster you control and a monster your opponent controls and destroy them, and if you do, special summon this card. We can play a single copy of Heat Soul. Heat Soul is so easy to summon this deck, and this card basically lets you draw 2 cards, because on your turn you pay 1,000 life points, draw a card. During your opponent's turn, you draw another card by paying another 1,000 life points, because it is a quick effect. We then play a single copy of Nightmare Unicorn to spin stuff, 1 copy of the Fire Charmer, because this card is really good to help us link climb, especially the amount of Snake Eye deck running around right now. We then play a single copy of Pit Knight. Pit Knight's also really good in the deck as a 1-up because it is a Cyverse monster to help us go in for our copy of Decode Talker Heat Soul, and also it's a fantastic card to be able to make in the deck. We then play a single copy of IP Masquerena to help us link climb into a copy of Nightmare Unicorn, or even a copy of Appaloosa in this deck. And then we finally play a single copy of Linkuriboh to use with our copy of Pit Knight to go in for a copy of Decode Talker Heat Soul. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. This deck is insane because you can Calamity Lock your opponent, and it's so fun to be able to play the Infernoid cards, especially with all the really cool cards in this build. I love being able to use the Snake Eye deck as an engine for this build because it works so well because Decatron is a level 1 fire monster, which is so cool. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.